Just, just so you know, we're waiting for one more to achieve quorum. No. We're still waiting for one. Debbie is on her way, and once she's here, we will have 5, and I'll get things started. For those who are online, Debbie just arrived, so she's just getting set up. That will give us quorum. And once she's set up, I will get started because it's our first meeting of the year. And when it's our first meeting, we need to start by electing a chair of the committee. So I'll start things up, and then hopefully we get a chair to take over for me.
I apologize to people online, but I had a 9 o'clock appointment. I got here as quick as I could. Sorry.
There we go. So we're all installed and ready. Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee. I'm Daniel Sayon, the Chief Administrative Officer for the ACRD, and I am going to call this meeting to order as we need to start by electing a chair. Before we get started, I want to recognize that this meeting is taking place on the territories of the Shot and Chesapeake First Nations, and we are grateful for the fact that we can live, work, and play here. I do want to give notice to all participants that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube, and that is on our regional district website. So before we go any further, because we do have an election of a chair for this committee, I'm going to hand it over to our General Manager of Administrative Services to conduct the election for a chair. Wendy?
Thank you. So I'll just give a, because we are doing our meeting hybrid, for those that are on Zoom, if there is an election, if you could please just email me at wthompson@acrd.bc.ca your vote for chair for 2023. And Daniel and I will calculate, also hand out ballots in the room, and then we will go calculate and declare the chair for 2023. So first, I will call for nominations for chairperson of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2023, a first time. Director Roth?
I'd like to nominate Deb Haggard.
Thank you. Director Haggard, do you accept that nomination? Oh, here.
I will if no one else wants to do it.
Great, thank you. And I'll call for chair of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2023 a second time. And I will call for chair of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2023 a third time. Great. Okay, there being no further nominations, I'm pleased to declare Deb Haggard chair of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2023.
Thank you so much, everyone.
We also have to do election of vice chair, Deb, so would you like me to do that as well? Okay, great.
Oh, yes.
So we'll just wait for Chairperson Haggard to take the chair. Great. So I will call for nominations of Vice Chair of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2023 a first time. Yes, Director Roth?
I'd like to nominate Fred Boyko.
Director Boyko, do you accept the nomination for Vice Chair?
Yeah, nomination, thank you.
Great, thank you. And I will call for nominations for Vice Chair of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2023 a second time. And I will call a third time for nominations for Vice Chair of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2023. Okay. There being no further nominations, I'm pleased to declare Director Boyko Vice Chair for this committee for 2023. Congratulations, Director Boyko.
Thank you very much.
We pressed the wrong button. Okay, so we'll get this meeting started. Daniel's already called the recognition of territories. So we'll introduce who is in the room. So I'll start with Director Roth from Beaver Creek and Director Corsi from Sprout Lake. He's the alternate today. And I'm Deb Haggard, and I'm a Sydney County representative from the city, and also the chair of this committee. And we have Jenny in the room, and we have Terry from Director of Finance. We have our CEO, Daniel Salon, and our corporate officer, Mindy Thompson. Did I miss anyone? Yay, good. Okay, could I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Is there any additions? Director Ron? No. Motion? Okay. Can I get a seconder? Second by Director Lecourcier. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Okay, we have the minutes from the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee meeting held September the 7th. Could we get a motion to approve the minutes, please? Motion by Director Roth. Could we get a seconder? Second by Director Lecourcier. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Petitions, delegations, and presentations. Is the delegate here, Wendy?
Yes, I see we have Victor and Seth Wright. Victor Capetti, I think I pronounced that correctly.
Thank you. Go ahead, Victor.
Yes, that is the correct pronunciation. Let me just share my screen here, if that's okay. Sharing to the wrong screen here. Is everybody able to see that? Perfect. All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Victor Copetti. I am a transit planner with BC Transit, and I have Seth right here with me, and he is our government relations manager. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the 2023 Transit Future Service Plan that's going to be created this year with Port Alberni. So before I get into the plan itself, I wanted to give a little bit of background context here. In 2012, Port Alberni's transit network saw a few service changes, namely the introduction of the Redford Exchange, the alignment of evening and Sunday service. So you can see on the maps there, evening and Sunday service were two different things, and now they follow the same route, as well as increase from hourly to 40-minute service. These were the last service changes that took place in Port Alberni. So this was the last time we saw any changes back in 2012. And there are no upcoming service changes for 2023. However, with the creation of a Transit Future Service Plan, we hope to change that in the future. So the goals here include developing a cohesive regional transit plan to incorporate the transit vision and goals for Port Alberni, as well as the First Nations communities, revisit and build upon some of the existing planning documents, review outstanding service and infrastructure priorities, identify improvements that can be made in the short and medium term, as well as 5 years and beyond. So some long-term improvements that we'd be looking at making, and ensure that the system and any plans are in line with the official community plan, any documents from BC Transit, as well as provincial planning documents. So what is this plan going to cover? We are going to be reviewing current transit system performance, as well as outstanding priorities from BC Transit and the province, looking at, like I mentioned, the official community plan, strategic plan, potentially doing a service and implementation review, and looking at other planning documents as well. This is also going to include review of population, land use, and demographic data. From there, we can kind of create a list and propose some new infrastructure priorities, and take that list, and consult with stakeholders, operators, and the general public to create a year-by-year implementation strategy for some of those changes. So again, kind of at a higher level, the main things that we're looking to do are engage with the community, both online and in person, and then identify service and infrastructure priorities for the future of Port Alberni Transit. Now, obviously, we haven't done that engagement as of yet, but that doesn't mean we can't start putting together a list of some key considerations based on previous planning documents and previous feedback we've gotten. Some of this includes a rural transit review for the First Nations, looking at shelters, access to bus stops along highways, for example, connections and routing to other municipalities, one of the most popular ones being service to Sprout Lake. Also looking at interregional service, potentially to Nanaimo. We'd also want to look at the transit system as a whole, looking for general system optimization or minor changes that could make the system a little bit better and attract new ridership. And there's a few other items on this list as well, some more minor changes. And one of the big ones for the long term, looking at the current facility for transit vehicles and the current exchange to determine if there are any constraints in terms of the growth that we're going to be looking at. So what happens next in terms of the next 3 months? I've got a lot of things to take back with me and a few things to do. I'm going to be reviewing a lot of the demographics, community plans, new development, the current system performance, and all that is going to be compiled into a background report. I'm also going to be creating a public engagement plan to design both the online and in-person engagement. And I'm going to be developing some draft service improvements from that list that we saw on the previous slide for staff and the community to review. From there, we're looking 6 months and beyond. We'll actually be going and completing that in-person and online public engagement, as well as having some key stakeholder consultation and surveying our operators to see what they have to say as well. From there, I will be developing the draft plan for review by the local government partners, and you can expect to see that draft plan. The goal right now is September of 2023, with anticipated finalization of the plan sometime in fall of 2023, depending on how the review goes and having it signed off. So that's everything I have to share. I'd be happy to answer or take back any of your questions, and Seth is here with me as well to support if there are any questions that are beyond my realm of expertise.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Victor. Some very exciting initiatives coming up. That's great. Any questions from the committee? Do you want to stop sharing your screen, Victor, so we can see all
Sure.
it's a little bit better? Thank you. That's much better. Now I can see everybody. Is there anything that the regional district can do to help you with this communications and coming up, or?
That's a great question. I'm definitely going to be reaching out to the regional district regarding stakeholders to make sure that everybody who needs to be at the table and is part of the process is there. And then obviously planning some of that public engagement, especially the in-person, we'll be working pretty closely with them to make sure we can create some events. We've been doing a lot of online engagement with COVID-19. But we really want to try to step back into the in-person realm, but also recognizing that sometimes in-person engagement is not ideal for some of the individuals in the community. Some may prefer online, some may not. We want to try to offer both to make sure that we reach as many people as possible.
Director Lecourcier.
I have a question on ridership. Is that changing very much over the years?
I might actually direct that to Seth, if you don't mind. Seth, you might have a little bit more historical context there.
Yeah, for sure. we are seeing strong ridership recovery coming out of the pandemic right now in the Alberni Valley. We're seeing pretty full buses, both on the custom side, which you fund and administer, and the conventional side, which the city administers. I'm just waiting for some ridership data and hoping to present it to your board on your board meeting on March 22nd. Sorry, I just need to remember the date. So I'm hoping to present some more fulsome ridership data at that time. And then I'll have some detailed numbers, but generally the numbers are looking good and we're satisfied with where we're at. There's certainly systems that are performing better and systems that are performing worse, but Alberni Clayoquot's custom system and the Port Alberni system are performing quite well overall.
Thank you.
Any other questions? That looks like it's it for today, but thank you so much and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you for having me.
Next on the agenda is annual view Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee Terms of Reference 2023. So are you speaking to this, Jenny? No. Is it going to be Director Beckett? Wendy?
Sorry, okay,
Oh.
we're on the terms of that. Great, thank you. So at the first meeting every year, all of regional district committees, they review their terms of reference for the year. So in front of you is the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee Terms of Reference for 2023. We're recommending that the committee approve it as presented unless there's any changes or amendments you'd like. If there are any changes, those would have to go to the board for approval. And if there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Thank you, Wendy. Is there any questions for Wendy? Seeing no questions, can we get a motion, please? Director Beckett?
I'm happy to make the motion that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee reconfirm their terms of reference for 2023 as presented.
Thank you, Director Beckett. Second by Director Roth. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next is our 2023 to 2027 draft financial plan. Terry, are you getting tired of this yet?
I am a little tired today.
Aw.
Okay, so today we are talking about the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services section of the financial plan. And basically what we're looking to do is make sure the board has all their questions answered that you have about any of these services, and then getting the directors to confirm that you're ready for us to draft the bylaw. Obviously, we'll talk about this again on March 8th and then potentially adopt on the 22nd. So not the final kick at this, but we do propose that we talk about each service individually. And then after we finish talking about them, we'll pass the recommendation or any amendments that you would like seen. And then we can move on to the next service. Staff can present again today. We feel like we've said it a couple of times and don't want to just keep repeating it. But if you would like us to kind of give you an overview of each service based on our presentation that we made on February 9th as a refresher, we are happy to do that. We can pull, I have the slide deck sitting there. We're ready to pull it up. Otherwise, we're happy to answer questions. So looking for the director's guidance on which way they'd like to proceed.
What's the feelings of the directors? Do you want to move forward or do you want Terry to do a short summary? Okay, we need a tiebreaker here then. Director Beckett, Director Boyko, what's your...
I'm sorry. I did not hear the comments from the two directors. You're going to have to use your mics, please.
Director Corsier wants a short summary and Director Ross says she's fine to go as is. So I want to know what your thoughts are. Do you want a short summary of the financial plan? Yeah.
I would like a short summary, please.
Okay, so we're going to have a short summary, Terry.
Okay, no, that's completely fine. So I think we'll just go service by service. So I'll talk about one, we can discuss it, and then we can kind of circle around. I don't actually think we had a slide for the aquatics, so I will just speak to that, and Daniel can jump in if there's anything. So the Alberni Valley Aquatics Facility is a proposed service. So basically at this point, we're doing a feasibility study to determine any whether we want to proceed with facility in the Alberni Valley. So significant engagement is planned for this year. We signed a contract with Urban Systems. No, we signed. Okay, I'll let Daniel take over.
No problem. We have a contract with HCMA, and we've also established an advisory committee. We've done all the background work in getting things started, and of course, we required the advisory committee prior to initiating any public outreach. And so the advisory committee is meeting next Wednesday, March 1st. It's going to be our inaugural meeting where we get our basic orientation and we start talking about the overall plan for the remainder of the year. This initiative, we're aiming to have this initiative wrap up at the end of 2023. And then that way, if there's any discussions around referendums or budgets or anything that ends up hitting those marks, we have time to talk about it as part of the 2024 budget. So this year is all about dialogue, all about discussion, all about asking the very difficult what ifs, and hopefully coming back with as much detailed factual information as we can, so that we can have an informed public discussion and then an informed board level discussion around next steps. If there's any questions on this, I can answer.
I'll just add one more thing. So there is no tax impact for this year. The contract and all the costs that we think are associated with this engagement are all fully funded with the tax requisition from a couple of years ago. So happy to answer questions.
Any questions on this? Director Beckett.
Thank you. I just want to comment that that brief overview was appreciated. I think it's short enough that we won't, use an awful lot of time going through this morning. Based on what I heard, I'll make the motion, and then if we need to discuss it further, great. I'd make the motion that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee recommend the Alberni Valley Aquatics Facility proposed service budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023 to 2027 Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Second by Director Roth. Any final? Did you have a question, Director Boto?
No, I'm just going to second as well.
Susan's too quick. Is there any final questions for Terry on this, on the aquatic center, proposed aquatic center, before I call for the motion? Okay, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Does this work for you, Terry, to have the motions after every?
Yes, that would be great, actually.
Awesome.
And then we know we're done with that one. So I'm just sharing this, and I'm hoping Heather's jumping on screen. Maybe she was there somewhere.
I am here. Yep.
Do you mind presenting? I'll be Vanna, and you can present your 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. So these are just some of the highlights from 2022. So in last year, we were able to hire a Fire Smart coordinator. That was a new position that we hired based on grant funding from UBCM that allowed us to deliver the Fire Smart program across the region. We're hoping to deliver that again in 2023 if we're successful with the grant. We had a very busy ESS year. We provided support to 33 evacuees last year who had been displaced from their home due to fire or flood. We had several emergency responses last year, including some extreme weather events, wildfire, flooding, and we had a tsunami advisory last January. We carried out Emergency Operations Center training as well as ESS training. The image from the slide was from an exercise we did in December with 17 different agencies from across the region. Last year, we did the Alberni Valley Evacuation Route Plan in partnership with Sashat and Hupachesset. We did lots of public engagement, attending lots of events. Fire Smart coordinator attended many farmers markets, fall fair. We did the hike to high ground event last April from Harbor Key up to Trinity Community Hall. We had about 100 people participate in that event. And then we were very successful in receiving 2 grants from UBCM for ESS supplies and EOC supplies and training. Next slide, please, Terry. And then the priorities for 2023 is to finish the hazard and risk vulnerability assessment, and that is for all of the areas beyond the Alberni Valley, including Bamfield and Long Beach. Once that's done, we'll be updating the emergency plans. We'll continue on with our ESS and EOC training. We're anticipating the Provincial Emergency Program Act legislation will be rolled out this spring, so we will be waiting for that to understand any changes that we need to make in our emergency programs. And then we'll continue on with public engagement. And as I mentioned, the Fire Smart program, we are just waiting on UBCM to hear about that grant. And I think that's it, Terry, unless there's a third slide.
Nope, that's everything. Yeah, that's everything we can think of. So we're happy to answer questions, and I'll stop sharing between each. I think, Debbie, would probably be easier so you can see.
Any questions for Heather or Terry on the emergency program? Director Boyko?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I see a large increase in the project expenses for the 2023 year, and then it drops off substantially. Are we going to have a finalized plan at that point that we don't need to update because there's no new roads or anything else going in? Thank you.
I can take that one, Heather, if you like. So the project expenses is where we run all the grant programs through. So we are finishing up the 100% funded Fire Smart grant, and then we have applied for another one. So we've built that project expense in, but we've also built in the offsetting revenue. And then we have also built in, because we are having significant success in these every year, for the EOC. So we have that one built in as ready as well. So that's just because we've only got planned projects that are grant funded for this next year. The Fire Smart is actually a 2-year program that we've applied for. So it will end up flowing into, what would that be, 2025? It'll go to March 2025 for Fire Smart if we are successful. So that's just as far out as we have planned. It also has one component that's not grant funded, and that's the completion of the HRVA, the Hazard, Risk, and Vulnerability Assessment. And that funding is actually part of the surplus from this year, because we actually requisitioned it last year and are looking to complete that project here this spring.
Thank you, Terry. That HRVA, that has already been done for the Long Beach area. I think I've seen that report. So that style of report is being planned for Bamfield and the Alberni Valley electoral areas as well.
No, the HRVA is for the whole region. So all of the electoral areas.
But is it going to look like the one that's currently done? And I saw one updated like a year ago from the Long Beach area.
It's going to look slightly different. That was done when we created the Long Beach emergency plan back in, I think, 2020. So it's going to look slightly different, and then it will be incorporated into the emergency plan. It's required under legislation to have an updated HRVA based on current information and climate change. The one in Alberni Valley hasn't been updated since 2013 or so.
Thank you, Heather.
Any other questions for Heather? Director Boyko, would you like to make the motion, please?
Yeah, just give me a second. I'll scroll back there. I'd like to make a motion that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee recommend that the Alberni Valley Emergency Planning proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading for the 2023-2027 Alberni Clay Belt Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Seconded by Director Roth. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Go ahead, Terry.
And I believe we are moving on to Alberni Valley and Bamfield Waste Management. So this service covers both the Bamfield Transfer Station as well as the services in the Alberni Valley. That includes 3rd Avenue Depot, the landfill. We have education services across the area, as well as curbside service in some of the a small section of curbside service. So we had some success in 2021 when we implemented the 3-stream curbside program in the city, and we've seen diversion going up from about 24% to 30% once we had a full year last year, which is great news. In this service, the majority is covered from sales or basically tipping fees at the landfill, as well as recoveries through the sale of metal and other recyclable materials. So we have a small portion that is part of taxation. We are looking at increasing taxation by $20,000, but that's specific to Bamfield. And we presented that on Monday, I think, Tuesday, at the Bamfield Community Affairs meeting. And we discussed that service specifically with them. Otherwise, the tax requisition is stable for the Alberni Valley. And we are looking at making sure that our closure and post-closure is all together. Some of the key things we're working on this next year is going to be the solid waste management plan update. And as part of that, we're going to be doing a waste audit and just going to look at exactly where is our waste going and how can we focus on better improving our diversion goals. The other thing I actually should mention, this is the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Committee. So at our next meeting, we will have our annual report and we'll dive into a lot of the details around that. We've got some main targets and we'll talk about how well we're meeting those. And I would say the last key point for this service is that we currently do not have secure tenure beyond 5 years at the landfill. And that's a big project. So we've set up a working group with the Sashot First Nation to discuss a lot of the issues about the landfill and its location concerns. And so we are dedicating a lot of time and resources to working with that group this year and for the next 4 years. So, yeah, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jenny. Any questions? Director Boyko?
Yeah, I have 2 questions here. I noticed that a couple months ago, we increased the tipping fees to cover the cost, but we're still having an increase in a tax requisition this year. So was the tipping fee increase not enough to cover the increase in tax requisition, or is the tax requisition increase to cover the loss of revenue from the agreement with the First Nations?
Yeah, so generally speaking, the tipping fee increase was adjusted in order to collect enough revenue to cover all of the costs. The tax increase that we're proposing, which is $20,000, will only be going to the residents of Bamfield. And so what we're seeing in the Bamfield area is that we have a significant increase in costs for the transfer station operations, as well as the recycling and hauling out of West Bamfield. So it's a sort of it's a component that we look at within this service because it is specific to Bamfield, and we do a lot of cost coding to specific areas. So we know how much that the Bamfield transfer station and Lady Rose and all of those costs are, and we've been tracking them, and we track them separately from the Alberni Valley. And so those costs are going up. Typically, we have a tax requisition of $60,000 that goes to those residents, and we are looking at costs that are around $109,000. And so we're recommending that that goes up to $80,000 this year to more appropriately cover the costs. The thing too is that although the Alberni Valley residents, when they go and drop off waste, whether they're city residents, they're paying that through their curbside collection fees, or whether they're going directly to the landfill, that's how a lot of the revenue is generated to cover the costs of the Alberni Valley. Whereas in Bamfield, we really only have taxes as the method for recovering our revenues or costs.
Okay. So how are we capturing the loss of revenue from the First Nations? Is that just the increase in tipping fees, or is there going to be a tax increase as well?
So there are costs associated with certain programs. One of them is that landfill monitoring group, right? So we're seeing a lot of increased costs with that, and we are incorporating that. We're installing extra monitoring wells. We have additional consultant costs, additional staff time. Typically speaking, because those are definitely related to the landfill, that's in the landfill operating costs, and we are recovering that through tipping fees.
Thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you, Director Beckett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the $20,000 increase for Bamfield, given the potential 22% increase of taxation overall for Bamfield, the $20,000 is a significant hit. But I'd be remiss if I did not acknowledge the staff have identified that we are being subsidized through revenue overall. So my point at the end of the day is that with the road improvements that are anticipated, later this year, I'm hoping when this goes back to letting a contract, that's taken into consideration and see if we can't, shave that down a little bit for 2024. So anyway, good job on that. It's a tough pill for us to swallow in Bamfield. Thank you for your support and for your subsidy.
Any final questions? Director Beckett, would you like to make that motion?
Absolutely. That the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee recommend that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Waste Management proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023 to 2027 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Thank you. Can we get a seconder? Seconded by Director Roth. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
All right, the next service we're looking at is the Alberni Valley Regional Airport. And basically we're recommending that tax requisition remain stable this year. We were successful in getting the provincial relief funding, which has allowed us to offset costs and created a surplus. We also have received approval from committees as well as boards to create an airport project coordinator. We are working on filling that position right now. And that is going to enable us to work on some of the basically initiatives that were identified in the strategic plan for this airport in 2021. So we are hoping to actually move forward with some initiatives once we have some more staff. Some of the key projects we need to look at in 2023 is going to be fuel system upgrades, doing some OLS clearing, as well as certifying the AWAS system, and implementing the market rate assessments, and looking at the lease lot expansion and some signage and terminal information. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? No questions? Director Roth, would you like to make this motion? Oh, Director Brokaw has his hand up. Sorry.
Well, we gotta have at least one question here. So my question is always about how we're going to attract new people here, marketing, increase the share of revenue from the airport as opposed to the taxpayers. So does it make sense to wait another 3-4 years to get some lease lot extensions to potentially attract people? Or should we advertise this as a build to suit? So say, hey, we'll build you a 5-acre facility, flat land, if you come here, or what size you want, that kind of thing, as opposed to waiting at least another 3-4 years to see any potential increase in revenue from the airport. Thank
you. So we have talked about that. We've talked about this at the Long Beach Airport as well. One of the problem is borrowing. So to actually build something in advance, we need to have an ability to borrow. We can borrow somewhat up to 5 years without any electorate approval if it's like a short-term borrowing. However, we would need some sort of assent process to borrow from MFA for longer than 5 years. So I know we've had this discussion with a building, for example, Parks Canada building at the Long Beach Airport. They would have preferred us to build them a building and rent it back to them, but then we actually have to go to the taxpayers and ask for permission to build a Parks Canada building to have an operations lease back to them. So the build to suit kind of option does have its challenges for us. It's easier to do the land. The difference with the EVRA is that we don't have any water system. We don't have a sewage system. So they're all putting in these individual systems, which isn't ideal. I don't really think for the airport as a whole, nor is it really great for the leaseholders themselves. So it does come with its challenges. I can let Jenny add, but I just wanted to talk about the MFA aspect of it.
Thank you very much, Terry. I think that they're amazing ideas, great suggestions, and some of the things we have to do is look at what the business case is. So, you know, like what are the different options? How much will they cost? And detail that out. Even for the lease lot expansion, there is significant cost to doing that, and is it worth the return on investment? So that's definitely been identified, and one of those things that we would like to move forward on in the next year is moving towards what does this look like. So I hope that helps answer some of that.
No, I think that answers my question. I would say that the return on investment from a lease lot expansion, or several of them, would be more than a $500,000 building. But that's my opinion. I'm ready to move on the motion if you want, Chair.
Are you okay with that, Director Roth? Because that is okay, awesome. So the motion is moved by Director Boyko. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Seconded by Director Roth. Any final questions or comments on the airport? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, so up next is the Alberni Valley Regional Water Proposed Service. This was a topic, I think back in 2017 was really like when the study was done and it had a lot of momentum. It's been pretty quiet since then. I know there's been concerns about, okay, wait, let me back up. So the concept is to get a filtration deferral and not have to put a treatment plant in for the city of Port Alberni. There is a potential of looking at drawing water from Sprout Lake. We're a long ways from getting to a study that actually says, yes, we should do that, but there was some initial work done. And there is an existing line from Catalyst that draws from Sprout Lake. So over the past couple of years, this has stayed in the budget. We haven't actioned it, but one of the reasons why it stayed is as Catalyst has changed hands a number of times over years, we just want to make sure that that discussion about the Catalyst line stays there. I'm kind of proposing that because we haven't had this active for so long, I would eventually like to wind this down. However, I think that because we have new parties at the city of Port Alberni, we're in the process of potentially talking about the conversion of Cherry Creek water, and I know they're discussing what their water source will be moving forward. I'm recommending that we just leave it. There's no taxation impact to leave it for this year. We just leave it in there so that we know it's still on the table, and then hopefully at some point in 2023 we'll be able to get together and chat about it a little bit and decide if we're going to decide not to proceed. If we decide not to proceed in 2024, I will reverse requisition. So negative requisition the amounts that are remaining from the parties that originally contributed the amounts. But I just think that it'd be good to have one more circle back on this conversation before we decide that we are done with it. And none of us have a whole lot of history on this because this was all, I wasn't involved and it was before most of our time, but happy to attempt to answer any questions.
Thank you, Terry. Any questions for Terry? Dr. Lukosi?
How does Bamfield fit in Port Alberni Valley water system?
The proposed, so when we're creating a service, we determine who the participants would be. And when we did the study, the concept was actually Beaver Creek, Cherry Creek, and City of Port Alberni, because Sprout Lake doesn't have a water system at this point, and Bamfield has its own source. So it would just be those parties. We bring it to this committee because we try to discuss everything that's Alberni Valley and Bamfield specific, but it would just be those participants if we move forward, and they would be cost sharing on those items.
Thank you.
Any final questions? Director Okoye, would you like to make the motion?
Thank you. That the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee recommend the Alberni Valley Regional Water proposed service budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023 to 2027 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Second by Director Roth. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, Terry.
I'll do custom transit. So no, that's good. With custom transit, we are basically, as Transit had mentioned earlier in their delegation, we're seeing recovery from COVID on ridership and in fact an increase. And so we are looking to expand service for 1,300 hours starting later this year. We are waiting. We will find out February 28th is when the province announces whether their funding is coming through for this. It's just confirmation for their budget for the year because they match our funding. As we do expansion, they pay their portion, we pay ours. Also in this service, because of COVID, we received some grant funding and we set up a stabilization reserve, which has allowed us to offset tax increases. And so the stabilization reserve, as presented in the budget, offsets costs in this year, not this year, next year, because we still have surplus over. Yeah. So our surpluses coming this year are offsetting any need for tax increase. And then the stabilization will continue to offset costs in 2024 and 2025. We have identified in this budget that we could take that stabilization and apply it to the 2023 budget. What will result is we will actually drop taxes in this service. We've considered this in past years, and when we talked about the stabilization reserve and set it up, we actually chose not to do that for a number of reasons, because when we artificially drop taxes, then you're seeing a double tax increase because we have to increase the taxes just to get it back up to where we were at, and then also another increase because we're going to be expanding service. So we presented the budget this way because it actually will reduce and minimize future tax increases. However, we recognize that the directors and everyone is seeing large tax increases. So we have made an optional recommendation in the report that if you wanted us to take the stabilization and apply it to 2023, we can, but we do want you to be very aware what that will look like next year, which is a large tax increase, which won't be fun for this service, but it can be doable. So yeah, happy to answer any questions on that.
Thank you. Any questions for Jenny? Anybody want to make a motion? Thank you. I move that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee recommend that custom transit proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023-2027 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw. Second by Director Okoye. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Terry, you taking this one?
Yep, the next one is grant and aid for McLean's Mill. So this is a bylaw for a grant and aid that is provided to the city of Port Alberni. The maximum of this bylaw is 30,000, has been unchanged for many years. And the participants of the service are the Alberni Valley rural areas. So Beaufort, Sprout Lake, Beaver Creek, and Cherry Creek. And staff have proposed it at the same level as prior years at 30,000.
Director Roth?
Yeah, I would just like more information about, what the money is used for, because I walk through there every week, at least once a week, and I don't see much activity. So I don't really know what it's for.
So we don't have a lot of involvement in it. We could invite either the city of Port Alberni or potentially whoever's operating it right now, to the March, see if we can get them to the March 8th meeting, and get an update for sure. Should we need a motion to that effect, Wendy? Would you like?
I think it would be good to have a motion. I believe it is the Chamber of Commerce that, no, it's not anymore. Okay.
Yes, it is. I was just
Oh,
going
it
to say
is.
that.
Yeah.
It's been the Chamber of Commerce since pre-COVID now.
Right.
Can I make that motion then?
Director Boyko has a question
Oh,
first.
sorry.
Director Boyko?
I would support that motion as well, because my question is related to, I mean, $30,000 is not a small amount of money. And personally, I tried to go on to the McLeanville website a couple months ago to book a campsite, and you can't phone there because no one picks up the phone, and you can't book it online. So the revenue generating capacity of that might be in question, but you can't book it at all if you wanted to. I'm just saying. So it'd be good to have them come talk to us and see what the money's actually used for. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. Director Roth, did you want to make that motion?
I'd like to move to invite the Chamber of Commerce to speak about the activities or what's going on at the McLean Mill site.
Can I get a second to that motion? Seconded by Director Boyko. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
So we're just going to clarify how that's going to work in terms of everything else we've said to put in. So basically, I'm not going to bring back individual reports about any of the services that you guys have agreed we are ready to put into the bylaw. So this one, I still have to put in the bylaw because we need to bring it on the 8th for first reading, but I'll make sure we have a separate section just to confirm that that service is okay to proceed, and that you're not looking for any further changes, just so it just doesn't get lost in the mix of all 60 services combined.
Thank you, Carrie. That sounds awesome. Okay. Sprout Lake Marine Patrol.
Thank you, Chair. So we operate a Sprout Lake Marine Patrol, which is for students that do outreach in the schools as well as at the provincial park boat launch during summer. We have a beautiful boat, as you can see there, and they will do lake work as well. We are going to do a little bit of work. The pontoons need to be replaced, so we're hoping we're doing that this spring. And this program receives a significant amount of its funding from a grant program. And we received a 3-year grant program. Last year was the last year of that. We have submitted the application. We have not heard back whether we're successful or not moving forward. We've built the budget as though we are successful. So if we are not, we do not get that money, we will be back to the board table to discuss the financial implications changes. But assuming we are successful, there is a minimal tax change, which I think is $1,000 more this year that we're looking to increase the budget by to cover the costs. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Jenny? Director DeCourcy, would you like to make that motion?
Got it. That the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee recommend the Sprout Lake Marine Patrol proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023-2027 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan Bylaw.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Roth. Any Did you have a comment, Director Beckett, or are we just trying to second the motion?
No, I was going to second it. However, I just want to mention that Director Cote is so passionate about the service that they provide, and I think it's I think it's wonderful. For the service and the fact that we're employing young men and women from our community to provide that invaluable service. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Director DeCourcy.
I like to support Penny on that too. I think it's a really good service. Just the fact that they're obviously moving around the lake, I think it makes people a little bit more aware they should follow some of the rules. And so I think it's very helpful.
Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Well, that was fairly painless. Okay, under reports, Recycle BC information. Any questions on the reports? Okay. No late business. Question period. Any questions, Wendy?
No, there are no participants and no questions today.
I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting to the public as per the Community Charter, Section 91J. Information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. 21CI of FOIPPA harms significantly to the competitive position or interferes significantly with the negotiating position of third party. Can I get a seconder? Second by Director Roth. All in favor?